hard and she'll never know I love her to escape. Bones are thrown, sticks and stones, just to let you validate your message to me, to me. Oh, I you know my beat is concrete. Just breathe, stay on my feet. You know my beat is concrete. Just breathe, stay on your feet.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Unholy HQ. And we're back again, another midweek away days. And look, we'll get into it, but another massive week for Newcastle United. But as of course, always joined by the main man, Chris Hall, and a new backdrop.
Yeah, do you know what? The wife had enough of all the shows, so she kicked me out. No, she didn't really know him. Do you know what? I'm away with work, so I'm in London at the moment. So I've got to try and keep my voice down because I'm in a hotel room. But yeah, I'm in London at the moment with work, and I will be on the 3 o'clock train home tomorrow, Pete. And I will be looking forward to meeting you about 6:30 in Liverpool for the match.
Yes, cannot wait. Going to be a busy, long day, but pray to God that it's worth it, and the boys do their stuff and yeah, get us going up the league again. You know, it's such a massive game, and we'll get into it. But
Huge.
you know, just touching on Sunday, you know, with the disappointment of losing that last-minute goal to Havertz. Although it's not the worst thing in the world, and we're not in a really bad position, it kind of puts a slight downer on things. So it'd be the best thing with 2 weeks free after that period of time for the international break that we get that win. But yeah, I mean, just from your perspective, you know, how big is this game, Chris?
Do you know what?
It's going to be bigger for you because of the local roots, but
yeah, of course. And as you know, I know personally Mike, who's going to be joining us shortly. I know Mike, so you know, obviously, I don't want to come across like I'm not bothered about the game. Obviously, I am, but it was funny actually because, and I'd love to hear Mike's opinion on this. I was talking to one of my mates, not Richie, by the way, Mike. I was talking to one of my blue mates, and he was saying to me the other day, "Oh, it's 6 points, and it's a 6-pointer," and I was like, "Is it though? Really?" For me, Pete, you know, I honestly, right now, if someone said you can have a point, I'd take it because for me, and that's not to say we can't win. I'm not being, you know, not confident, but I just think to myself, you know, it's another point. It's another point on the board, and to be fair, it doesn't help Everton, and I don't believe it will be a draw because I think Everton need to win, and either they will go on and win, or we will win the game. I just don't see it being a draw because it doesn't really help Everton. So no, I'm pretty confident if I'm honest. I know people won't want it. Certainly, blue noses won't want to hear that, but I'm pretty confident, especially given the performance at the weekend, Pete. You know, obviously on Sunday, bitterly disappointing that we've walked away from Stamford Bridge with no points. But anyone who watched the game will know that, you know, the scoreline and the result did not reflect the performance. And when you think, Pete, you know, we've rested some players there as well. Joe Linton was out, Shelvey was out, Willock was out, and Fraser was out. I would expect at least 2 or 3 of those to be back in the starting 11 tomorrow, and they're going to be fresh, Pete. They are going to be fresh. Oh, sorry, St. Maximin, little player called St. Maximin. Yeah. So you know, we're talking. It's worrying times for Everton. I've got to be honest.
Yeah, it is, and we'll definitely get into that. But yeah, you know, there's no reason why we're not going to this game with confidence.
No.
It's not a must-win. A 6-pointer is a lot of our games have been this season, and we can go into that with a little bit more relaxed about the situation. But hell, we want to win that game. We want to with all due respect, put that pressure on Everton, because if it means putting that pressure on Everton, it means that we're further up the table and we're further towards that safety mark, which is exactly where we want to be. But look, we'll get into it. We've got the main man, Mike, and as always, I say it every week, there is no better way of previewing a Newcastle game without having the opposition view, and I'm pleased and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Mike back on for the Unholy Trinity podcast. How you doing, Mike?
Not too bad, fellas. Not too bad at all. Yeah, looking forward to tomorrow. Obviously, not.
Well, look, you made it like a perfect segue, really, because obviously from the last time we spoke, it was the opposite way round. You guys were out of the relegation zone, looking relatively comfortable. Maybe just a win in the build-up to our last game would have kind of propelled you guys away from the drop zone, and things were looking up. But as we see it right now, things have changed. You look at the league. I'll put it up on the table here. Put the table up on here. 17th place, only outside the drop zone on sort of goal difference, and obviously Newcastle on 31 in 14th place. From your perspective, might sound like an easy question, but are you in a relegation scrap? And secondly, do you feel like you are in a position where you could actually get relegated this season? What are your thoughts on that?
100%. I think pre-Spurs, I was feeling okay. I know we hadn't performed particularly well away from home. Post sort of Man City at home, we performed particularly well first half. We had a couple of chances. So I didn't really foresee us getting turned over by Spurs. Any side can lose to Spurs, as is, Man City beat by them, a few weeks ago. So they're not a bad side, but what that game and Wolves second half, it's the manner of defeats with us, at certain times, and we are better at home, of course, but the mental fragility in that side is absolutely incredible. It's off the scale, and it's years and years and years. I think it's ingrained in the club. I've had this conversation many times. I think it's deep rooted, and it sort of filters down to the players as well. And post Spurs, I was not in a particularly great mood, and then post Wolves, I was a good 24 hours before I started to come out of it, because you think, if the worst does happen, what happens to our club? We should be nowhere near the relegation zone, absolutely nowhere near the relegation zone. I think a lot of it comes down to Benitez being in. I think that was, he was kept on too long. He shouldn't have been brought in the first place, but he was kept on too long. He signed a couple of players before he went, and then he was sacked, 2 weeks later. Lampard comes in a couple of days before the transfer window closed, and gets obviously a couple of players up. But it wasn't an ideal January for ourselves, and I don't think it, obviously, as is shown with Eddie Howe, he had a difficult start to life at Newcastle. He didn't start particularly well, losing in the FA Cup to Cambridge and things like that. He lost a fair few games early on. He's now obviously had a decent January transfer window. Brought in players, importantly, that know the Premier League. On paper, you'll go, who's Matt Target, Dan Burn, what are they going to bring to the side? For me, the players who are absolutely ideal for the situation that Newcastle found themselves in. They know the league, they're solid players, and I thought it was pretty clever with what Newcastle actually did. Chris Wood's another one. He's been there, done that with Burnley. So these kind of players know exactly what they need to do to get a side out of a relegation scrap, which is what has happened. And with Frank Lampard, he's 7 games in, and he's still going through a rough patch, trying to figure things out with from a tactical point of view, in terms of players who are they good enough for these things going on that he's trying to work out. So we're definitely in a relegation scrap. People talk about games in hand. Games in hand mean nothing. Points on the board means something. Having 3 games in hand means absolutely nothing at all when you're in the form that we're in. And could we go down? 100% we could, yeah.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with everything you said, Martin. And that's the big thing. And Chris, I'll come to you. Is that you look at their squad of players on paper, and we'll look at the sort of potential lineup later on, because Mike's nicely sort of put his like expected 11 on there. But you look at that squad of the players. Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison, Damari Gray, Andros Townsend, Decore. You go through the list, Ben Godfrey, Jordan Pickford, England #1 goalkeeper. You think to yourself, Chris, surely that cannot happen. But it did for us. We were in a similar position, but surely that can't happen.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, Pete. I mean, I think the reason that a lot of fans are saying, and including Everton fans in this, not just us, but a lot of fans of other clubs are saying that Everton are in a tricky situation, and I think it's because you look at the fixtures. But you're quite right, because when you look at the 11, or even you look at the Everton squad, Mike's right. They shouldn't be anywhere near relegation. Even just look at the January transfer window. Bringing in the likes of Dele Alli, Donny van der Beek. Not many clubs can do that kind of business. And I say that as like a compliment to Everton. They've obviously, we all know what Donny van der Beek thought. Donny van der Beek didn't want to come near Newcastle because apparently, he thought that we'd be in a relegation battle, and that's why he ended up choosing Everton. If the rumours are believed to be true that Newcastle were in for them, but apparently that's what he said. And I don't know. It's an unusual situation for Everton, because I look at their team and I even look at the manager. The previous manager, Rafa Benitez. I knew obviously he was coming from China, and he'd probably down tools a touch, and that's not doing him any disrespect. But going to the Chinese league isn't the most competitive. I mean, we've seen ourselves, Pete, what it's done to Salomon Rondon. We absolutely, and Michael know this, we absolutely adored Salomon Rondon, and he was really, really good. And we were gutted when he didn't stay at Newcastle. But I now watch him playing for Everton, and he looks a shadow of the player. He really does. He doesn't look. And I don't even think that's so much down to professionalism as in keeping himself fit, because I believe that he probably will have kept himself fit. But if you play for a good 18 months, 2 years in a far weaker league, that's what potentially can happen to you, isn't it? And you have to question whether that's happened to Rafa Benitez, or whether or not Rafa Benitez has maybe he's lost his touch a bit, or maybe he's out of touch, if you like, because when Everton's, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, Everton made a pretty strong start of the season, and everyone was thinking, what, this isn't too bad, and then things fell away. I don't know whether there's any issues within the dressing room. I mean, Mike would probably be able to expand on that far better than I would, but I would certainly, when I look at that squad of players, or the majority of the starting 11, I would question whether there's problems in the dressing room. I know Luca Dean left pretty. Didn't leave on a very great note, did he? Obviously, he was very sad to leave, and he was quite critical of the manager at the time. But I feel like it's the board and the people higher up that have really kind of put the club in this position. I mean, even if you just to touch on Luca Dean, if you just look at that example, Luca Dean's allowed to leave the club when he's a fan's favourite, fantastic left back. He's allowed to leave the club, and then a few days later they sacked the manager who he fell out with. And you think it's like they were just. And again, I'm going to let Mike come in on this, but I feel like the relationship between the board and the fans is they were far way apart, and I get the impression that the fans are worried about the board, and that's why we saw all the protests, because it kind of feels like there's no plan, there's no structure, and it's all very very last minute. There's decisions that they make. I mean, am I fair to say that, Mike?
I think a lot of the Everton fans would probably echo what you just said. To be honest, I think the lack of a plan and direction has been evident for many years. I think I said this last time I was on. When Marcel Brands came in, that should have been the time really to knuckle down and work to a plan, to a structure, and get every single side in that football club working exactly the same way, exactly the same tactically, same setup. So when players do move through the age brackets, the transition is a positive one, and they know exactly what they need to do in their particular role. And that didn't happen. It's been a haphazard approach with too many people interfering in certain roles and wanting to basically have their say. And when they're employing people to do a job and not letting them do a job, and it doesn't just go for Marcel Brands, there's other people as well. But he says once he had the sign off on signings as well, hence why Rondon rocked up, for example. So most definitely, you probably all saw that there was an article last week which mentioned Everton potentially being sanctioned because of breach of Premier League's profit and sustainability rules, which was a pile of rubbish, by the way. The Daily Mail was printing nonsense. Have we breached it? Well, we've been in conversation with the Premier League for the last 18 months, knowing full well that we were going to be running things close, maybe going over. They then basically have had sight of every deal that we've done since, and have given us basically guidelines to operate in, which we have been doing. So there's no chance of a points deduction, but that shines a light again on the board, which, according to Bill Kenwright, I'm not Bill Kenwright's biggest detractor, by the way. You know, it's not me. I just saw some nice dinosaurs there referring to Jordan Pickford, I'm assuming. But I'm not his biggest detractor. But he said that our board was revered, and people will come to him and say, you know, what would Everton do in this situation? Look at what we've done. Look at where we are financially. The board have got a lot of questions to answer, and that's why you've got Everton fans, you know, asking a lot of questions and wanting change at board level. You know, I know we've got this internal situation going on where things are getting reviewed, and you know, there's been changes already. Obviously, Kevin Thirlwell's come in, and I know Tim Cahill's got a little bit of a role in the club now on an ad hoc basis and things like that. But a lot of questions got to be answered, and you know, I think whatever way this season goes, this summer I think we'll see a lot of changes when it comes to board level. To be honest,
yeah. It's a very, very good point, and you know, sticking on that point with sort of behind the scenes, and particularly sort of in and around the boardroom, I'll come with an early question for you. And Geordie Toon for Life, we love the questions in the chat. We really, really appreciate it. I know we put a message out earlier about the questions. Keep them coming in, guys, because we will get through them. But Geordie Toon for Life says, does Mike think all the background noise with the Russian money into the club is playing a big part in the atmosphere around the club itself? Obviously, you've said, you know, changes need to be made, but do you think that's having an impact in the club, but in particular the players? Do you think they're listening and hearing what's being read and it having an effect on the pitch?
I don't think so. I think with players in general now, they'll get paid. There'll be no problem. It's the job. You know, if they weren't going to get paid or there was any kind of issue, they'll move on in the summer. I don't think that really impacts. It's nothing to do with them. It's not as big an issue as people think outside the club. To be honest, I think everyone thought that Usmanov was the man who was basically running the show. So Mashiri was the face, Usmanov was the money, and that you know, that may well have been the case. But at the end of the day, Fad Mashiri is the man who is on the books as the majority shareholder. Over 90% of shares are his. He's got his own money. He earns money from outside of USM. He earns money from a variety of things, and you know, he will also have other friends in high places who will owe him favours, who will sort things out with. So I don't think so. No, I don't think so, and it certainly will not impact Bramley Moore. That's for sure. So I don't think that's going to be a huge issue with the players, to be honest.
Okay, no, that's a fair point, and this is why we ask these questions, because obviously the opposition fans, yourself, Mike, you'll know a lot more about what's happening in and around the fan base and the club than we will. But it's an interesting topic, that one. But look, we'll dive back into football and football related topics again, and you know, we'll come back to this man. Obviously, we've talked about Lampard coming in, obviously being manager of the club. I think we were he'd just been employed. I think he'd only had one game, which was the FA Cup game, if I'm right in thinking, before you guys came to St James's Park. You know, obviously, from an obvious point of view, we know that the results haven't gone your way. But are you seeing things, and I'll kind of give a little bit of context of why I'm saying this. Are you seeing things that suggest that the situation's going to get better at Everton? And the reason why I say that is because, you know, if you listen to Frank Lampard's interviews that he says sort of before and after games, he sort of alludes to that he believes that things are going to get better. But as a fan, Mike, do you think that actually you're seeing things that gives you the impression that it's going to get better on the pitch moving forward?
Certainly did in the area games under Lampard at home. I mean, go back to the Brentford game, the Leeds game. You know, I thought Everton were exceptional in both of those games. Now you can maybe put that down to people say the new manager bounce, and it would always happen whoever you bring in. But I do like the way Frank Lampard speaks. I think he's very honest. I think he calls players out, which is fine with me. You know, you go back to the Spurs game, and he said the only player where he had any kind of note was Anthony Gordon. Basically, the rest of them were a waste of space, to be perfectly honest, and that's no problem with me. You know, we've got to understand he is new to the club, and he's obviously bringing in new ideas, and the players on the whole do seem to be happy. Obviously, not happy that we're not winning many games, but on the whole, they do seem to be generally happy. I think some, as I say, the mentality issue is an issue which has been a problem for many managers and stems from many things, and to ask him to sort of rectify that quickly was never going to be the case. The only way for me that mentality changes of a football club is by a change of personnel. So some of those players, without sort of naming any names, Michael Keane, as one example. But he's a player who's very fragile mentally. He really struggles. You know, when it doesn't go his way, you know, when he something in the game doesn't go his way, his head goes down, and he thrives when he plays sort of really deep. Sounds really daft for a centre half, but at Burnley, if you think back, they played everyone refers to it now as a low block. So his bread and butter is literally heading balls away and sitting deep. He's got very little pace. He'll get turned quite easily. So it's that kind of thing where the only way to change the mentality is to change players. But we do have enough players there of quality to basically adapt to Frank Lampard's ideas and get us out of the situation that we're in. I've seen enough that we can do it. As I say, those early games, especially Man City, first half, I thought we were exceptional. And that was only, you know, a couple of weeks ago. So yes, I have. I think as fans, we're going to play a big part in it. You know, some people hate it. I mean, you've probably seen on Twitter, Chris, you probably definitely will have seen some Everton fans moaning. You know, they call some people super blues for saying, you know, telling people they are the team and, you know, don't be sort of on the backs and stuff like that. And it's not that. It's a case of, you know, we're in a predicament, and as a fan base, we should try and be united. And when we're at home, especially, Goodison Park's always been a nightmare for many sides to come to, especially under the lights, as it's going to be tomorrow night. Make it horrible. We did it against Leeds. Did it against Pickford. You've got to do it. And tomorrow, we're fully expected to be that way, and that's our responsibility. And any football fan's responsibility is to back their own team.
I think that's a fair point, Chris. Just from obviously, I say the outside looking in, but you are sort of inside anyway.
You know, it was just a pig in the chat. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, that's why I'm laughing as well. I think one of our mates, Pete, has just put this up. Evening, Mitchie.
I'm not even going to respond to that, Chris. I'll let you respond to that.
No, I'll be keeping away from the horses. I'll have been doing the horses all day at Cheltenham, and I've lost enough money. So yeah, no more horses for me.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm not a fan of horses, I've got to be honest. So yeah, I'll be staying well away. Don't worry about that. I think all two fans are not big fans of horses anymore, I've got to be honest. But yeah, we'll move swiftly on. Okay, we'll focus on a couple of players actually, and I want to get your assessment because we talked about these guys that just signed for the club at the point in which we played you last time. Again, just your assessments really on a couple of players that you brought in, a couple of big players. We'll start with Donny van der Beek. Obviously, he came in on loan from Manchester United. He's come into the team. He's played a few games for you now. What's your assessment on Donny van der Beek so far at Everton?
He's been a bit inconsistent. I think some games he's been very good. You know, the Leeds game especially, he was good. Man City, I thought he had a decent game. He's, you know, he struggled a little bit at times. Probably being asked to do certain things that maybe he doesn't particularly want to do. The midfield two at the weekend certainly didn't work. We took Alan out and played the Corey and Van der Beek with both of them sitting deep, and it didn't really work. So he's got quality. We've seen the quality that he's got. Early on after we signed him, Everton fans were saying, we've got to get him in, we've got to sign on a permanent deal. And those noises are quieting down over the last couple of weeks, to be honest with you. That's football fans, right? Obviously, we're all fickle, I suppose, in some way, shape, or form when it comes to assessing players' ability. But it's I do like him. I think he does bring quite a bit to the team and looks good in the midfield three, which I fully expect us to go back to tomorrow night.
Okay, interesting. And the other big signing that you made, Mr. Dele Alli. How from your perspective, but also from the Everton fans' perspective, because he obviously came with a little bit of baggage when he came in. There was a few question marks. Obviously, it was well documented that we in the sort of on the deadline day came in with a last minute bid for him. He obviously was doing the medical at Everton at that time. He signed for Everton. Are you seeing signs of improvement? I know he's not started every game, but are you seeing signs that there could be a player there?
We all know what Dele Alli possesses. We all know his ability. We get to see it, to be honest. He's shown a couple of occasions his petulance, where he's sort of left his foot in on goalkeepers, and that's one of those things where he's obviously frustrated. He's not started the game yet. He's getting 20-25 minutes here and there. I don't think that we particularly set up to suit Dele Alli. I think he's better, off the front man, which we don't particularly set up that way. If you're going to do it, then you have to play in midfield too, which doesn't really suit the players that we've got. He will get more game time. As I say, we know his quality, but I think he's got to probably start a game and start games for us to really see the ability that he's got. But I don't expect him to start tomorrow night, to be honest. But he's on a 2.5 year deal. There'll be plenty of time for Dele Alli, I think, to make an impression for us.
Chris, I during the Unholy transfer shows, I kind of put together an argument for Dele Alli as to why we should sign him maybe ahead of Jesse Lingard. Just playing devil's advocate. Obviously, Jesse Lingard was a fantastic player. We signed neither in the end, anyway. But from your perspective, Dele Alli, is he kind of like, not necessarily impressed you, but have you seen any signs from his performance, if you've seen any from Everton, any of the games Everton played recently, that he could become a player?
I think, like Mike said, we all know the quality Dele Alli possesses. I think the big issue with Dele Alli, and it was the issue for me, when we were linked with him in January, is has he lost that hunger? Has he lost the desire? Is he one of those players who has shot up the leagues really early, ends up getting the mega contract, and then has he now reached the point where what is he, 25, 26 maybe, around that age, and he's on the mega money, and he's like, well, I'm not going to get any higher, so he's hit the top of his ceiling, and he's kind of only on a way down. That was my only concern with Dele Alli, and whether he still had that hunger. I mean, from the bits I've seen of him, you can tell there's a player there. Even just little moments where like he'll collect the ball and then he'll shimmy past, or he'll do a quick layoff and then pass and go kind of thing. You can definitely see the footballing brains there, because you don't lose that. It's whether or not he wants to really kick on, push on, and get back to the levels that we know he's capable of. He's more than capable of doing that, in my opinion. I just don't know whether he will. Maybe he needs the right manager in order to bring that out of him. That was another thing that I said, Pete, about, for me, the big concern was the fact that Poch didn't fancy him, and then Jose didn't fancy him, and then Nuno didn't fancy him, and then Conte didn't fancy him. And that I said this last time, that's my big concern. 4 managers all dropping him and leaving him out, and hopefully Lampard can turn him around. Who knows? And if there's anybody in English football who can turn Dele Alli round, it should be Frank Lampard, because Dele Alli was probably looking up to Frank Lampard when he was playing, who was a fantastic, a fantastic central midfielder who would make late runs into the box and score goals. And Dele Alli, in his peak for Tottenham, was doing that behind Harry Kane. So there's no reason why it can't happen. But I think I think if it doesn't happen at Everton, I think you'll find that he'll just slide away. I just hope he doesn't do like a Wilshere, the way he's just fell off a cliff and that's it. Because Wilshere's not old, but he's ended up as in like a Norwegian and Scandinavian league or something, and it's like how does that even happen? But again, I hope that doesn't happen to Dele Alli, but he's certainly got the capability of getting back to somewhere near the top, if not the top.
Yeah, because look, you've talked about that potential. He's got massive potential. He's 25 years old. He's in that position where he, in my opinion, I think he can really develop and become a player. And that's kind of why I sort of built an argument about him coming in. I mean, his record alongside Lingard in terms of his career at this stage is already better than Lingard's was at 25 years old. So, and that's with a number of years of not playing football all the time. But you've got to say, you made a really good point, Chris, and, whether you agree with this as well, Mike, that, Pochettino, who had a big say and a big part in his development, kind of turned away from him at some point. Jose Mourinho, the same. Nuno Espirito Santo did exactly the same. And it's kind of, when you've got a number of managers doing the same thing, it kind of makes you start thinking, is it the player? Is there an attitude issue? Is there something that's switched off in his mind that, with regards to football, as he hit his peak too early? There's a number of players out there in their careers that maybe have got to, say 24, 25 when they came through at ages 18, and they've had such good years in their younger years. They get to 24, 25, and it's almost like the light switched off and they can't seem to get it back. I'll throw a player out there now, and we had a talk about him on Monday. Marcus Rashford is another one. Is you look at the way in which he performs at the moment. Is there a light switched off moment? Marcus Rashford came through at 18 years old. Do you think that could be the case from your perspective, Mike? I know it's obviously difficult being an Everton fan, and you've kind of basically committed to spend a huge amount of money on him long term. But do you think that could be something that could be the case?
I think with Dele Alli, I think when you spend so long at a club, you get very, very comfortable. And even when he wasn't playing, when there was questions, I mean, we all saw the Amazon Prime documentary on there, and it showed obviously Mourinho speaking to him and questioning his attitude basically when Dele was asking basically why he wasn't playing. And I think it's always been a question mark over him. But when you spend so long at a club, Rashford could be the same. Been at United since he was a kid. You get comfortable. It's your norm. And sometimes you need to be taken out of your comfort zone to rediscover that fire and that magic again. But both those players have got bags of ability. But when you've done something for so many years and you say it's inside your comfort zone, he probably got to the point where he wasn't really bothered anymore, because it was just, well, I'm getting paid, I'll go and train, I'm not playing on Saturday. Whereas when you come to a new club, you would hope then that you rediscover that fire in your belly to want to play football at the highest level again. Because like you say, it'd be a waste if he doesn't. He was always a regular starter for his country. He would never ever see England play and Dele not be in the starting 11. So to go from that, it's been a bit of a fall from grace. Can he rediscover it at Everton? I'd hope so. Like you said earlier on, he's learning from the best in terms of Frank Lampard. A player who was probably played slightly deeper, but from a goal scorer perspective, Dele will give anything to have Lampard's goal scoring record in the Premier League. That's for sure. Absolutely. So he is learning from the best, and he should be able to take that on board and look up to Frank Lampard and think, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. But I think comfort and being at the same club for years, especially younger players who burst onto the scene. He got a big move from MK Dons, earning big money early on. Marcus Rashford burst onto the scene, scoring against Man City and what have you in the Premier League at a young age. So it can, as I say, I think that's probably plays into the situation quite a bit, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. Very much a fair assessment at Dele Alli. And look, I'll be interested to see how his career develops, certainly after tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, you've mentioned that you think he could be on the bench. I hope that's the case, and I hope he doesn't get on and influence the game in any way to our benefit. But yeah, after that, I'm sure because he, like I say, he's an England international. He's played in big tournaments. He, on his day, can be a fantastic player, and I'd love a player like Dele Alli to really come back into form and show what he's about. A little bit like Jesse Lingard did when he went on loan to West Ham. But we'll wait and see. Chris, let's kind of have a look at maybe see if there's a couple of questions in there for Mike before we move to the next phase.
Do you know what, Pete? I was going to say the exact same thing, mate. We've had a few interesting questions, and last time I remember when Mike was on, we had about 50 questions, and we were like trying to ping them all off and not keep Mike too long. I better put this on because the wife will kill me if I don't. So she's put, "Hey Blue Noses, we need to win. I want a draw, so me hubby and son are both happy. One in the Newcastle end and one in the Everton end." So I said I'd put that on. That's off the wife. Tom Dixon has got a question.
Hold on a second. Blue Noses, more than one?
Yeah. Oh well, she must think that there's loads of Blue Noses watching. That's what she must think.
I always thought she was insinuating that it could be a Chris Hall Blue Nose.
I hope not. I hope not. Because she like, I'll be having words when I get home if that's what she's trying to out me on here. I get enough of that off me, mate. Because I have a particular dislike of Liverpool. I get accused of being a blue, but never mind. Right, Tom Dixon. So, question: what is happening with Pickford? Is he currently out of form while playing with Everton? Then, when it comes to England games, he's back on top form in goal. What would you say to that, Mike?
I think it's one of the biggest myths in Premier League football that Jordan Pickford doesn't play well for Everton, because Jordan Pickford's been our most consistent player for the last 18 months. People will go back to the mistake he made against Spurs for the Son goal, which he'll say himself he should have saved it. I would have saved it as well in the heyday, to be honest. But he knows that he's his own biggest critic. But Jordan Pickford has been very, very sort of switched on. I think that it's an easy thing because his form for us, prior to the last 18 months, it wasn't great. It was inconsistent. Everton fans were saying the same. He was making high-profile mistakes. All goalkeepers make mistakes, and I said it last time. Every goalkeeper will make mistakes, and the reason that it's so magnified is because it generally leads to a goal because they're in goal. So it's one of those where goalkeepers are always, I think, beat over the head with a stick and sees it a bit unfairly. And as a goalkeeper myself, I'm very much in the goalkeeper union. I've probably got a bit more sympathy with goalkeepers more than most, but. It's a myth. It's a myth. He's not out of form for us. He made one mistake recently, but he's not out of form for us. He's England's best goalkeeper. People can tell about Ramsdale all they want, but listen, he's just a bit of a show pony. He'll be, what's the name? He belongs on the bench. Jordan Pickford for England, you all see how well he does perform. He nearly single-handedly won the European Championships from that penalty shootout alone. If the England players could have put the ball in the back of the net, they would have won the tournament, and he's very, very good for his country. But he's been, and I take my hat off to him because I've criticised him a bit over the years. Last 18 months, Jordan Pickford's been probably one of our better players.
I have to be honest. I got a lot of stick around Jordan Pickford over there during the Euros of the summer. Me and the boys, it's kind of like a tradition. Me and my mates, we always go out to watch England games together. We always find a pub. It becomes the pub to go to, and we all just kind of cram in there every game, food, beer, all the rest of it. And one thing I did throughout the tournament, I think until we got to semi-final stage, I refused to acknowledge Jordan Pickford as an England player or a decent goalkeeper. But I did in the end say, he had a good tournament for us, and he played well. I would argue maybe, and he doesn't play a lot of games, I would argue that Dean Henderson is probably a better goalkeeper all round, although he doesn't play for Man United. But I think Dean Henderson will prove to be a better goalkeeper. But there's been some big moments with Jordan Pickford at Everton, where he's made some fantastic saves and kept you guys in games or won you games effectively. So I do agree with that point. But look, hey, I'm a Newcastle fan, so I'm not gonna give him too much credit, especially going into a big game tomorrow night. But we'll see with that.
Can I just add a little add on to that?
Yeah, go for it.
Now that we're on the Jordan Pickford subject, which I'm sure Mike knew was probably coming up, but Mike, you will remember from the match at St James's. You'll remember obviously the scoreline, and you'll remember the atmosphere that Jordan Pickford had to put up with. And obviously there was a couple of moments, particularly I think when he went to clear the ball and he sliced it. I mean, you know yourself, Jordan Pickford is always a target, whether it's away fans, home fans, whatever. It can be at St James's or Goodison. Do you think, given the current predicament, and bearing in mind, like you say, he's played in some major games for England. For me, Mike, in recent years, I always feel like he loses his head. Like, I always remember the game we played when Ancelotti was manager, and Ancelotti dropped him because he wanted to give Olsen a run out. And I thought, no, Ancelotti, in my opinion, Ancelotti spotted the fact that Jordan Pickford's, at times, I'm not saying he's done it every game, but at times he can get wound up by the atmosphere, and he can kind of lose his head a little bit, if you like, for want of a better expression. And he gets too embroiled in the atmosphere. And, I remember the game as well, Mike. I think it was at St James's, I could be wrong, where, he's coming off at half time and he's pulling tongues at the Newcastle fans, and then we go and win 3-2. And I just think he lets himself down a little bit. And I just wanted to know, in terms of tomorrow, with it being such a big game, do you think he's going to firmly, have his blinkers on and just be like, I'm going to ignore everything around me? I'm sure that's what Frank Lampard will say to him. But do you think he will handle things tomorrow, is what I'm asking? Yeah,
I think, going back to the Olsen situation under Carlo, it was a case of, that was when Pickford had made a few errors. He had a few niggling injuries with his side and things like that. And that was when he went away and started speaking to a sports psychologist at that particular point and got a bit of help, because we've all seen occasions when he has been giving it to Newcastle fans, especially because he gets so much stick. And when he's been here at Goodison Park, he's still been pulling tongues at Newcastle fans and stuff like that. And tomorrow, if we score and win the game, he'll do it again. I don't doubt it for a minute. And fair play to him, because every time he goes back up to the northeast, someone tries to chin him. So I don't blame him, to be honest with you.
I get that.
He gets so much stick. I think I wouldn't be taken out of the game for tomorrow, certainly not, no, because as much as I think Begovic is a half decent keeper, I wouldn't be just throwing him in cold in such an important game tomorrow. Pickford has played in many, many high-profile games, tournaments. As I say, he is more switched on now. The game against yourselves at St James's this season, I don't really think. I think the atmosphere impacted Everton as a whole. I think we struggled because of the atmosphere. Even when we went ahead, we didn't deserve to. We weren't great, and we threw it away within about 60 seconds anyway. But I think the whole side was nervous because of the way that the crowd was, and that shows you what a crowd, what a partisan home crowd can do for the home team. And that's why, obviously, we're trying to whip our own fans up to say, listen, you've got to play your part, and you've got to be there. And when Newcastle have got the ball, you give them loads. You make it horrible for them. That's what you need to do. So no, I've got no question over Jordan Pickford's mentality. I'd have him in there, no problem at all. When you've got 38,000 Evertonians and a couple of thousand Newcastle fans in there, it shouldn't be an issue at all.
No, I do agree. I wasn't suggesting you drop him, but I was more thinking, would it, will his attitude be different this time around? And by the sounds of it, it will. I mean, one last thing I want to say as well, Mike. I was speaking to someone today, and they were telling me that apparently there's going to be loads of flags at the ground tomorrow. Is that right?
Yeah, well, supposedly, we decided to get this going. I think all of Lampard's games, and the fans have responded. I think it was a little bit. I think what we found the last couple of home games, so Man City and Wolves, I think with what's gone on in obviously Ukraine, and obviously having Mikhalenko, one of our players, whose dad's actually fighting with the Ukrainian army at this moment in time. It's become difficult, I think, to sort of whip up an atmosphere. It's been quite somber. They've been playing John Lennon Imagine and things like that, and
the siren's not there anymore, is it, Mike?
The siren's gone, and I don't want to go down any kind of political road at all. That's a decision made by the club, and I totally get it. Listen, I totally understand why that's being done. The siren has been, put this situation aside if we can. The siren's been a great addition. The siren ripped up the crowd.
I love the siren. Sorry, Mike.
Derby. Yeah, it's one of those. It's been brought in for the Merseyside derby when we do Liverpool, basically across the league. So it's been an ever present since then, and it really sort of whips the crowd up. It gets the hair stand up on the back of your neck, and you wait for Z cars to kick in. And I think that's been, that being taken away is probably impacted a little bit as well. But we understand why. But yeah, there's been a call to get as many flags as they possibly can, and banners and things like that. And I know there's a few fan groups been working on things in recent weeks, and I know they've been apparently showing the players emails and video messages and stuff like that. And listen, if you can't get up for it, to play football as a professional, then you're in the wrong job, aren't you? You know what I mean? So, but players go around with blinkers on, and players are fans, and maybe they just don't understand what it means to us, because and I speak from the heart here. It affects people's mental health. It affects people's mental health. If this club goes down, I tell you now, it's going to be a difficult time for a lot of people, myself included, because it does impact your week. You can go into work on a Monday, yourselves, and you can feel absolutely terrible for days because it's just going round in your head, and that's football. And maybe players, because it is just a job to them, and some players are literally just gifted because they're good at football. Some players don't even enjoy it. Was it Michael Essien said when he retired, he'll never watch it? And I know there's a couple of Everton players, by the way, from people I've spoken to, who are, well, apparently good at football. Probably hasn't shown it this season, but they can play football at the highest level, but don't enjoy it and don't really enjoy football. It's just a job. You see, that's the difference, and that's why, like I said, it's the trying to whip the crowd up is becoming a little bit of a weapon, and something which obviously we're trying to exploit as best we can.
Yeah,
I think you made some really, really some good points. Just that point that you touched on about footballers. Well, first and foremost, we know how that feels. We've known how that feels twice, being relegated from the Premier League. 2009, 2015, 16, I think that season, and from our perspective, we're the same as you, Mike. We live and breathe football. Me and Chris, we talk all the time about Newcastle. We wake up, it could be 7:30 in the morning, and there's voice notes or there's messages about Newcastle United, and that's what we are. We live and breathe it every single day of our lives, and the feeling that you have. I never thought I'd have that feeling at a younger age of being relegated. I never thought we'd be in that position. But that sinking feeling I had in 2009 when we went down, like I never wanted to feel that again. I think I was kind of numb to it and sort of expected it in 2015, 16. So my feelings on that were different because I'd already experienced it once, but it's something I would never want to experience again. And like you said, I think for a club like Everton that have never been relegated from the Premier League, it would be catastrophic because of the players that you've got. We've talked about the financial situation of FIFA Fair Play that could have implications possibly in that way. It would just be an absolute nightmare for that to happen. But you're right in the second point that I was going to make with regards to players and it just being a job. You've touched on one or two players from a perspective that they just kind of see football as a job and they don't actually watch football. I'll throw another one out there, Gabriel Bonlahor, who talks very regularly on TalkSport, mostly about Newcastle in a negative way, in that he was quite adamant at age 29, 30 that, once he had enough of football and he made his money, he had no interest in coming into the game as a manager or seeing it long term because he never actually liked football. And he was quite open and honest with that. I remember reading that article and thinking, how strange is that a player that's playing Premier League football, European football, had an England cap, actually doesn't even watch football or even care about it. It doesn't, like for me who loves it, and for us three that love the game, it doesn't register with me. And then I've talked about on previous loaded shows about our captain Jamal Lascelles. He did an interview with a podcast. I can't remember who. It was during the lockdown in 2020, around May in 2020 time, and he talked about the fact that he didn't watch football. And that baffled me. He was our captain at the time, still is now. And he talked about the fact that he didn't watch football and that if he sat down and chilled out to watch anything, it was basketball. His brother plays for Newcastle, basketball related. And that really shocked me. And I think in the last few years, I think it tells in performances, because when a player isn't motivated with football, when a player isn't watching other footballers, other better footballers, if I was a centre back and I was Jamal Lascelles, I'd be watching players like Sergio Ramos, I'd be watching players like Thiago Silva, I'd be watching some of the best players in the world and thinking, what do they do? How can I improve my game? How good are they on the ball? What do they do on the ball? How do they switch the play? How do they keep possession and keep things ticking over? How do they improve their game? A good footballer always talks about how they mimic their game, or they had a role model that they looked up to and they watched as a kid. And it baffles me, the fact that there are professional footballers out there playing at the highest level that don't do that. And for me, it doesn't make sense. I think, just those couple of points about the relegation and about football, I think they're really, really good ones. And Chris, I know you've talked about this before when we've had this conversation. It's crazy. It really is. Yeah.
No, it absolutely is, mate. It's unthinkable, isn't it? That there's people that would feel that way, especially like if you get to the very top of your game and you're not even that bothered about it. It's mental. Absolutely mental. But I've got another question here for you, Mike, and this one's a really, really good one. And I don't think we asked you this last time, so I'd be really interested to hear your points on it. So it's from Chris C, and he says, question for Mike, who would you have chosen to replace Rafa?
Good question.
I've said it time again. Christophe Galtier, who's currently at Nice, doing an exceptional job. We looked at him before he moved in the summer, and he was nailed on to go to Nice, and they thought it was going to happen. And I was at him every single day of the week. I mean, he's done really well wherever he's been. The kind of mindset that we need, that we can build structure around, good work with the director of football, would have been absolutely ideal. So for me, that wouldn't have been a gamble. It would have been less of a gamble than getting, but he says, to be perfectly honest, and less of a gamble than Frank Lampard as well. So he would have been my man, that's for sure. Yeah.
Sorry, Pete, go on, mate. You want to say something?
No, go for it. We've got another question.
Yeah. I'm just trying to fly through these questions for Mike. We've got one from Tom Dixon, Mike, and he says, if Everton lose tomorrow night, are you confident that you will stay up? I know you have some big games coming up.
No. Not confident we'll stay up. No,
I mean,
no, not at all. I think a lot of when you look at football, it's how you lose games, isn't it? And how we've lost games recently tells you all that you need to know, and that's why the confidence within the fan base is low, and that's why there was a bit of talk after Sunday against Wolves that fans seem to have almost given up. I don't think the word acceptance is probably the right word, but Everton fans have come a little bit numb to what they're seeing and where we are in the table. So no, if we lose tomorrow night, then absolutely not. We've got some big games, still to play. United, Chelsea at home, Liverpool away. You've got obviously a few games with the likes of Watford, Burnley, Crystal Palace, Brentford, Arsenal. We've got games in hand, but they're all big games. Every game now for me has got to be sort of treated as a game, as a cup final in its own right, and you've got to approach it that way. And if we lose tomorrow, then I think we're sinking without a trace, to be perfectly honest.
I'll stick them up for you now, Mike. I've got the fixtures up here from Sky. They put the next games up. Obviously, the Newcastle game is on the Thursday, but from that perspective, like you said, you've got Everton, Manchester United come to Goodison, the big one at Anfield. Then you've got Chelsea coming to town, Chelsea on decent form, chasing obviously top four, and then away at Leicester, Leicester seem like they're kind of on the march again, with Vardy and a number of players coming back in. I mean, Newcastle aside, how many points do you think, potentially you could get out of those games at this moment in time?
See, the United and Chelsea games at home don't really bother me, because I think we always raise our game against the better side of Goodison Park. We showed it this season, obviously, Man City. We should have really got a point. Definitely should have got a penalty. That's for sure. You know, Arsenal comes to good us and we beat Arsenal. I don't really fear United and Chelsea. The derbies are right off. Just cancel the game and give them 3 points and be done with it, because that's just a waste of everyone's time going to Anfield with the predicament that we find ourselves in. West Ham, good side, good form, decent manager in David Moyes. Got them playing obviously to a particular style, and they all know the roles. So very, very organised, good team. So maybe nothing there, but Leicester away. It all depends, you know, if we can turn in any kind of form from home, which we haven't shown any signs of doing. You know, that's the big thing. Can we go away from home and put a performance in? So I still think out of, you know, if we just ignore tomorrow, those 5 games after that, I still think sort of 6 points, maybe 7 points, to be honest with you. The only game I'd write off is the derby, to be perfectly honest. That's the only game I'd write off.
Yeah, I think although you won, I think a year or two ago, I think the record isn't great at Anfield, is it, in terms of Everton picking up points there? So I think that's a fair assessment. But look, we've still got more questions, and we will come back to them at this point. But you know, I think we're ready for some stats. And of course, there's only one way that we have stats on away days, and it's with this man.
Evening, lads. Hope you're all well.
Evening, Keith.
Good. How you doing, Keith? You okay?
Yeah, really good, thank you.
Good man. And look, massive game tomorrow. Massive game at Goodison Park. Yeah, you know, could tip either team's seasons in certain ways. Could put us into a position where we're really comfortable. Could change Everton around in terms of their outlook of their season, going into what we just talked about, tougher on the fixtures. What are the stats suggest about this game?
I've got some stats here, head-to-head stats. I've got a lot of stats, head-to-head stats. I've got some stats about Everton's form. I've got some stats about Everton players and some Newcastle players as well. So I'll just take it from the top. Everton, historically, and this goes back to when records began, I've got a slightly better record against Newcastle in head-to-head. Newcastle have won 69, drawn 36 and lost 74. The Premier League record, though, is absolutely even Stevens. 21 wins each with 11 draws from 53 games.
Wow.
Both teams have scored the same number of goals in the fixture as well in the Premier League, 74 goals. Everton have got a slightly better defensive record than Newcastle in this fixture. 15 clean sheets to Newcastle's 11 in the Premier League. Newcastle's record at Goodison Park, they've played 50, they've won 10, they've drawn at 13, and they've lost 27. He has some, and just moving on here to some stats about Everton's form. Everton have they haven't lost consecutive league games at Goodison Park to Newcastle since the late 50s. So this will be going some if they lose this fixture here. And the form in recent games at Goodison and in this fixture with Newcastle in the Premier League hasn't been as strong as say 10 years ago, 5 years ago. The Everton are winless in the last 3 home games against Newcastle, 2 draws and a defeat. They've only won 1 game in 7 as well in the Premier League against Newcastle. Just moving on to that form, their records, I think it's been touched on earlier in the show as well and throughout the show. In the last 20 games since they were 5th in the league at the end of September, They've played 20, they've had 2 wins, they've drawn 3 and they've lost 15, and they've scored 16 goals and conceded 40. Just 2 clean sheets in those 20 games as well for Everton, and they were against Leeds and Tottenham. The home game at Goodison Park for the Tottenham game. Everton's players, Dominic Calvert-Lewin has scored the most goals against Newcastle than any other team that he scored in the Premier League. He scored 5 goals in 5 games, 100% record. So Newcastle will be hopeful that Calvert-Lewin doesn't play tomorrow night. And Ryan Fraser for Newcastle, he's scored more goals in the Premier League as well against Everton. He's grabbed 4 goals against Everton. And Everton's top scorers this season, goal scorers, Andros Townsend, an old Newcastle favourite, 7 goals, and Damari Gray with 6 goals. How do the managers line up in this fixture? Eddie Howe, well, he's managed 12 games, he's won 5, he's drawn 2, and he's lost 5. So he's got nearly about 1.5 points. And Frank Lampard, he's had 4 games against Newcastle, he's won 2 and he's lost 2.
Okay.
Interesting.
Very, very interesting stats. Definitely, especially some of the stats around Premier League matches, kind of a lot of it right down the line. So not much to take away from that in terms of who's going to get the advantage, but it's going to be an interesting one. It really, really is. And I think that moves us nicely on to the predicted starting lineup. So as a little bit of a new feature, I always ask the guests and Chris to come up with the home and away starting lineup. So we'll start with Mike. Mike nicely put together his starting lineup. So I'll put it on the screen. Mike, talk us through it. Talk us through why maybe certain players are not playing, or in your opinion, and why maybe you're set up in the way that you are. So here is Mike's version of his team to play against Everton. And noticeably, after what Keith said, is that you don't think Dominic Calvert-Lewin will start.
No, he's had a virus. He only got back into light training yesterday. I said to you, didn't I, as well, Pete, yesterday. He's been in court as well. So he's, I don't think, I can't see, nothing serious. Well, by the way, speeding this serious, but on the grand scheme of things, nothing, he's going to be going to jail for. He got 3 points and a £900 fine. And before anyone says we can't have the 3 points Everton as a club, before that weekend gets made, just want to clear that up. So no, I don't think he'll play. I think this virus has been going around. He's had it. Damari Gray's had it. I think Bransbury's had it as well. So I don't think he'll start. But yeah, Pickford in goal. I've gone from Bransbury and Keane solely for height, because Chris Wood's a pain in the arse when it comes to set pieces. So we need a bit of height, and Bransbury's is left-footed as well, which is also good to have a left and right footer. He's a big, strong kid. He's probably, I think he'd be our biggest player. If you see him, he's a big unit. So I've gone for them too. I've gone for Godfrey left back, a bit of pace. I think we need pace on both sides when it comes to the full backs. Hence why Holgate's in as well, and not James Coleman. Just because St. Maximin will cause us problems. So if he goes sort of whatever side he goes on, he's got a bit of pace to face there. So there's no one quicker than Ben Godfrey in that Everton side. So for me, I'd put him out on the left wing. Back to the midfield three, like I said earlier on, Alam back in there after being rested at the weekend. That'll free up then the Core and also Van der Beek to be a little bit more forward thinking. Because they were very, very defensive-minded at the weekend, and both struggled. The Core especially didn't go forward, I think, once in the game. Like I said, no Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison, Sensel. Damari Gray, he came back after that virus and injury against Wolves, got about 65 minutes or so, 70 minutes in that game. So he should start the game, should be absolutely fine, getting up to speed, and the star of the show in recent weeks, Anthony Gordon, definitely keeps his place. And as I say, the midfield three is absolutely vital for us, because when we go to a 2, and it happened under previous managers. And every single time we go into a team, we get overrun. So we need to shore things up there, give those two centre halves a bit of support and stability in front of them as well. And that's what I will be going for. But I'm sure Mr. Lampard will have a slightly different way of thinking tomorrow.
Interesting team, very interesting. So, Chris, any thoughts about that particular team? If we are to set up against that lineup?
Yeah, do you know what? It's an interesting one, and I can totally see why Mike's getting the pace on the wings. I think that'd be very wise from Lampard. I mean, in the wing back positions in terms of our pace on the wings, that's what I'm referring to. Yeah, I think Ben Godfrey. I see Ben Godfrey playing left back. I don't think he'll play Mikalenko there, which obviously Mike agrees with. Seeing Coleman out is surprising. Is Coleman out, Mike, or is that just your preferred lineup?
That's just me. Seamus Coleman,
yeah.
He probably will openly admit his legs have massively gone.
The legs,
the first Spurs goal of the week when I think the ball got knocked past him, and 2-3 years ago he gets there comfortably and he turned and just gave up. Just thought I can't get there, and it's a concern when you've got so much pace to face on the wing to be playing Seamus Coleman. He probably will play. That's the thing about it. He probably will play, but I'd definitely be inclined to be going Godfrey and Holgate, to be honest.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, I think it's interesting as well, Mike, that you say you play with a midfield three, because if you line up like that, that is exactly how I expect us to line up. Exactly. Van der Beek and Decore. So I'm assuming Van der Beek and Decore kind of cover your wings, and they're kind of all action, and then Alan's there just to sit and protect the centre backs. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, Alan is better going forward. Alan needs a bit more of a license, in my opinion. But the problem we've got is we haven't got anyone else to sit as a six, if you like. Decore can't do it. He's certainly more forward thinking. Van der Beek can do it, but I don't think he's quite as good as Alan. Certainly in the tackle as well. Everton have been really, really weak in the tackle over recent weeks. I mean, you probably saw a bit of footage on Twitter today from the weekend where Neves got away from Decore and Coleman and Dele Alli, and it was just absolutely pathetic in terms of the efforts and how poor we are when putting our foot in. So yeah, I think Alan will be straight back in there just to allow those two to be freed up and as I say, just to give a bit more support to those two centre halves as well.
Yeah. I mean, those wingers, they do worry me. I don't know about you, Keith or Pete. Those wingers are worrying. Like for me, particularly, I'd say over the past 6-7 weeks, Anthony Gordon for me, Mike, stands out like a sore thumb. Like he every time he picks up the ball, he looks a threat. And I think, do you know what? I underrated him actually. I when he first broke on the scene, I remember thinking, there's not much about this kid, but he's really, really stepped it up. And I think he's been very impressive. And obviously, I know Damari Gray's been out for a while, and he made his comeback, didn't he, in the last game, so that those minutes and hopefully will build up his match fitness. And Richarlison, it's never nice playing against Richarlison because, as we know, he's a nasty player, isn't he? In terms of he wants to win everything. He's very bullish, and he will do, in my opinion anyway, he will do whatever it takes to win a football match, no matter how. And I do respect players like that because if you want your team to win, you'll do it at whatever costs. And so having someone like him up front for me is dangerous. Probably something, Mike, which I feel like Dominic Calvert-Lewin lacks, that real nasty streak. So yeah, Richarlison would worry me, if he was playing up top, which I expect him to. But,
that front three should cause problems for any side. Anthony Gordon's has been terrific. He, like you said, yeah. I think most people didn't think he would probably make his a career at Everton. He was on loan at Preston last season, never really played particularly. And then, to be fair to the previous manager, he gave him his chance because he couldn't get or didn't get another winger in. Anthony Gordon was due to probably leave the club on loan at the very least. Got given his chance and hasn't really looked back. And he's what I like to refer to as a seat clicker. He gets the ball and the fans are up because they watch him go. He goes at players, he's positive, he tries to get the shot away, he commits tenders. Exactly what we've been crying out for years. And Gray does the same. Gray's got that pure pace. He's quicker than Gordon, but he's got that acceleration to beat a man. Decent shot on him. So that front three should, as I say, should do its job. Say the only concern is obviously the form we find ourselves in is that lack of confidence and the mentality within the squad. So Everton really need to score the first goal. To be perfectly honest, if we go behind, you'll notice yourselves the air will be sucked from the stadium, and it'll be silent. So we've got to go ahead in the game.
That's normally what they say to. That's normally what teams, when they come to St James's Park, say about us. They say, quieten the fans, get the first goal, and you'll see the kind of air get sucked out of the stadiums. And you're right. And look, I think Keith, from your point of view, I think. Do you think that's the kind of message that Eddie Howe will be saying to his team on tomorrow night? Start fast, try and get the first goal, suck the air out of the stadium.
Yeah, it'll be the same sort of. I think it'll be the same sort of mentality as the Southampton away game. And Newcastle's away form, as well as their overall form, has been steadily, massively improved since the turn of the year. 3 away wins, and I certainly wasn't predicting a win against Southampton down at St Mary's, and it'll be the same sort of approach. And I know that, Goodison Park, I've said it on previous shows here, is for me is one of the key factors which could keep Everton up this season. The atmosphere that they generate with Lampard, an evening game under the lights. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough game for Newcastle, and I think Eddie Howe will be trying to reinforce that message. Get the early goal, quieten the crowd down.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, a very interesting lineup there. If that's the lineup that's going to be for the game tomorrow night. But we've got Chris's starting lineup for Newcastle. Obviously, just before that, there's obviously been Eddie Howe's press conference. He's talked about a number of players. Joe Willett being good for the game tomorrow. Ryan Fraser being good for the game tomorrow. They're both fit in training, which is great news. He said it's touch and go on Joe Linton and Shelvey. Whether that's mind games or not, we know he's done those mind games before. We know what Eddie Howe's like, saying they're touch and go, and all of a sudden they're in the starting lineup, all guns blazing, like they've never been away. But yeah, other than Joe Linton and Shelvey, it seems like we've got a clean bill of health. Obviously, of course, Ron Wilson, Trippier, it's looking like that's going to be the lineup. So, look, Chris, I'll let you talk about your lineup, and here it is.
Yeah, so this is a combination, Pete, of kind of what I expect, but also what I hope for. For me, this is how I think we should be lining up. Obviously, the goalkeeper speaks for itself, so I won't go into that. Bain and Shard have struck up a fantastic partnership at centre back, so fully expect those two to play if fit. Matty Targett left back, absolute shoe-in. Manquillo, Pete. Now, obviously, in previous weeks, you've heard me say that I wouldn't change Kraft, but since Manquillo has now come back in the team, I think a bit like Bruno, which we were speaking about last week, the week before. Once he's in that team, he stays in that team. So Manquillo should definitely be right back now. The midfield three, it was a difficult one. And you predicted this, Pete, over a week ago. You said as soon as Bruno's in the team, nobody will want to drop Bruno from the team. And I found myself doing the exact same thing when I was putting this 11 together. And so you'll see here, Mike, we're lining up very, very similar to how you line up. We have Joe Linton on the left side of central midfield, and he's basically darting round, winning possession, laying it off simple. And then we have Joe Willock similarly doing a job on the right hand side. However, we see Joe Willock make those darting runs forward a lot more, and I find that Bruno will sometimes step up and cover Willock when he goes forward, or Shelvey. Obviously Shelvey was doing it as well, but the wing position's always been, well, not always, the wing position of late has been an interesting one, because since St Maximin's been out, Fraser was moved to left midfield, or left wing if you like, and Fraser has just been phenomenal in left wing. He previously played on the right because St. Maximin's preferred position is left wing. But as you will have seen, I have put Maxi left wing, and I think for anybody who watched the Newcastle home game against Everton, you'll probably understand why. And also, I was thinking that Seamus Coleman will play right back, and if Seamus Coleman's playing right back, I'm sure Ryan Fraser, could give him a ton of time, but I think Alan St. Maximin really causes big damage against Seamus Coleman, and possibly Michael Keane if he's next to him. So that's why I've got Alan St. Maximin left wing. For me, he has to play, if fit, in his preferred position, which is left wing. Ryan Fraser, he then comes in for Jacob Murphy on the right hand side. Ryan Fraser's probably been our biggest improver in terms of where he was to where he is now. Since Eddie Howe's come in, like he's literally one of the first names on the team sheet. I'm sure Keith and Pete will agree with that. And big Chris Wood, obviously he got his goal against Southampton, which he took very, very well, by the way. And as Mike's already alluded to, I think Chris Wood will fancy his chances against an Everton team who aren't the most confident at the moment, and have been accused of having a slightly shaky defence. Chris Wood will probably be bang up for this game. So yeah, that's where I am with it.
Nah, very interesting lineup, and I'll get Keith's opinion on this. So Keith, looking at that lineup from Chris, is there? Would you go with that lineup? Is there anything you would change from that lineup, personnel or positionally wise?
I quite like that lineup. I've got to say, I like ASM and Fraser backing up Chris's points there. Fraser has been in terrific form lately, and especially against Everton where he got that goal, brilliant. ASM as well. If they can repeat that, my thoughts are obviously happy with the back line, but my thoughts are the midfield. If Eddie Howe is right, and I believe Keith Downey's backed that up tonight as well about, Joe Linton being a doubt, then who we would actually go with in the midfield? Would you be inclined to bring Longstaff in or Richie in?
Yeah. Tom Dixon, big supporter of the show. They said if Joe Linton's out, who would they go for? And that was one thing I was going to come to, is because regardless of our opinions on Sean Longstaff as a fan base, Sean Longstaff had a fantastic game at Stamford Bridge on Saturday. Yes. So I think. I'll ask both of you, Keith and Chris. Would you agree that it would be very hard to take him out of the team after such a good performance?
Do you know what? I'll answer that first, Keith, only because I've put this 11 together and I've knocked Sean Longstaff out the team. So I must admit, Pete, I didn't find it very difficult, because as soon as you start talking about the likes of Joe Linton and Willock, for me, given what we've watched over the last few weeks, I have to put both of those in ahead of the likes of Sean Longstaff. However, because Sean Longstaff, had such a good game against Chelsea, and let's not forget, Pete, we discussed it. I think we discussed it, didn't we? Was it the away? No, it must have been the match reaction. Oh no, I know what it was. It was on NUFC Matters when we did the 5-minute ban. Yeah, we were discussing, the fact that Sean Longstaff put in such a fantastic performance against the likes of Jorginho, Kovacic, Mason Mount. That's not an easy thing to do, and considering he's been out for such a long time. So my preferred option would be Joe Linton playing, and if I see Joe Linton in that 11 tomorrow night, I'll be absolutely buzzing. I'm not going to lie, especially against an Everton central midfield at the moment who probably isn't ticking or isn't operating in the way that it normally would. I feel like Joe Linton could potentially bully the Everton midfield. Mike, this will probably sound absolutely bizarre that we're talking about Joe Linton in this way, but if you've not been watching Joe Linton in the past, 2 or 3 months, he's literally gone from a no-hoper of a left winger or a striker to like this absolute ox of a central midfielder, and he's unbelievable. So I really want to see Joe Linton in that 11 tomorrow. But Keith, what are your thoughts on Sean Longstaff? Would you be as easy to drop him as what I am?
I just think, on terms of fitness, if Joe Linton's not quite ready yet, I think I wouldn't want to risk Joe Linton in case it has an adverse effect and we're brought him back too early. I think Longstaff did have a really good game against Chelsea. Being out, just backing up your points there about his match on Sunday, going against those players. I think Eddie Howe in particular as well. He doesn't give players the cold shoulder like straight away. Like if players are involved, he seems to have a really good way of managing those players and keeping them involved. So if there are fitness doubts over Joe Linton, then I think go with Longstaff. Keep Longstaff in the team.
It's hard. It's hard to not see a situation because if you think about Eddie Howe is very much he rewards players for their performances. You look at Dan Burn, for example, and he alluded to this in his press conference today. Jamal Lascelles wasn't removed from the team because of bad performances. He was taken out of the team because of illness. Dan Burn comes in, he plays fantastically well. The partnership with Shaw comes along. They stay together. Bruno scores a fantastic goal against Southampton, an unbelievable goal. Goal of the month, goal of the season potentially. The technique and the quality that he used. He had another really good game where he did a man marking job on N'Golo Kante and kept him very quiet on Sunday. It's very, very difficult to take him out of the team. You just alluded to it as well, Chris. Manquillo coming back into the team. Kraft has done a great job from what we saw of him for a couple of years, and now he comes in under Eddie Howe and does a great job, and has a huge impact and is getting some results, some really big results in the last few weeks. He comes out, Manquillo comes in. Manquillo stays in the team. He had a fantastic game again on Sunday. So it seems like it's going to be the case for that. And there was someone that alluded to the fact it was Trippier for Prime Minister. I love that name. Fantastic name. Trippier for Prime Minister. Shelby's unwell, hasn't trained yet, if I recall correctly. Trippier for Prime Minister, you're absolutely right. Eddie Howe alludes to that in his press conference, that he hadn't yet trained at that point in his press conference this morning. Obviously, I had a training session today, ready for the game tomorrow. Could well be trains, everything's fine, he's in this team. But I do think that Bruno Guimaraes is going to start. The only thing that I would change about that team is ASM and Fraser.
I thought I bent your arm the other night.
Look. I think it's a spot on lineup for me. Your lineup, Chris, is the lineup that I would go for, 110%. The only thing I would do is swap the two wings, and the reason being is because, in my opinion, and I banged the drum about this last season, just in my opinion, with regards to ASM, I think ASM's best moments as an actual winger have come from the right-hand side. And when I say an actual winger, I mean a winger that runs at defenders and crosses the ball into the box, not necessarily an inside forward that cuts inside, shoots. He's good at that too, but I think Everton will have a plan for ASM playing on the left-hand side in terms of kind of drowning him out. ASM on the right-hand side is a different entity because he can go down that right, he can cut in onto his left. You don't actually know what he's going to do, and I think he's even more trickier on the right-hand side. But equally, with ASM, you're going to get more crosses into the box from him as a right-sided winger, and actually, it's going to benefit the likes of someone like Chris Wood. Fraser, we know from the performances that he's produced on the left-hand side already in ASM's absence, that he can be a winger that can go on his left, on his right. He can cut inside, he can drive defenders. We saw what he did against Brentford. He was outstanding. He has a different way of playing. And I think if Holgate does play there, like Mike says, I think it'd be a really, really difficult game for Holgate with Ryan Fraser playing at the top of his game at the moment. So if it was me, that would be the only change that I would make. But I think that's a really, really good team there. That's for sure. But it's going to be interesting. I'll be looking forward to the team news coming out. I say that I'll be probably on the way up up to Everton at that point, so I may not even see it. I'll be driving on the motorways. Please, motorways, be good to me tomorrow. I'd have done a full day at work. I'll be tired. Please, just let me get there with minimal traffic. I want to be able to enjoy the game. So yeah. At this point now, before we get to predictions, I know we've got a few more questions from the chat. Do we want to hit some questions? I've just seen that Liverpool have scored at the Emirates Stadium. I don't know who scored, but there has been a goal. I also saw in the chat that it was 2-0 Brighton. I'm sorry, not 2-0 Brighton.
2-0 Tottenham. That's a full-time score, that, Pete.
Okay, Spurs won 2-0 against Brighton. So, interestingly for Newcastle fans, if we win, we could go as high as 12th.
Possibly, yeah.
We can go as high as 12th. With that win ahead of Leicester, ahead of Brighton, we could go up at least a couple of places with a win. Interesting developments there. Obviously,
12th, mate. You're right. 12th. And the Liverpool goal was Jota, by the way.
Jota. Oh, my Premier League team is in my team.
Footy. Yeah,
that's the one, fancy football. So yeah, happy about that. But yeah, got some questions. I think we've got some questions for Mike. So let's shoot.
Yeah, sure. So this is a quick one from Tom Dixon. Mike, I know we've touched on this very briefly, but I don't think we went right into it. So Tom Dixon asks, what's your thoughts on Rondon? I know he scored some goals for you, but I'm thinking if you give him a good chance, he will start scoring.
Do you want to back then, Tom? I think what you can do is tomorrow, on your way back, just whack him in your car and then problem solved. Now, listen, as much as we laugh about Rondon, difficult situation for him, came in to be a bit part player, clearly wasn't fit. It took many months to get to any kind of level of fitness. He's limited, he hasn't got much pace. He's a big strong lad, and I think sometimes he just doesn't use that. I don't think to his strength. It sounds a little bit daft, but he should be better holding that ball for me and bringing play in. Sometimes he's all right, sometimes he's not. Scored a couple of goals against Bournemouth in the cup. Scored another goals against Palace away from home as well. So listen, it's probably a bit of what I expected from Rondon. Maybe I expected a little bit more, but I think he was on a high and not, and once he was getting used so often by Benitez because it was needs must. So he couldn't be sort of gradually worked into the team. But no, not for me. He won't go down as a particularly good Everton signing, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair, Mike. Because, like you say, when I've watched him for yourselves, I've noticed he doesn't seem the Newcastle player that we all know and loved. So yeah, no, I can see why you think that. Johnny Tune for Life asks you, Mike. I can't see Everton going down, but does Mike think the squad is good enough considering the difficult games coming up?
I don't think it's about ability with us. It's said it before. It's mentality. It's turning that mentality around and getting a bit of belief. And winning the game of football brings belief. If we win tomorrow, gives us a tiny little bit of breathing space going into the FA Cup quarter final on Sunday. So I think it's not so much the ability. We've got some real quality players there. We really have. So the team is good enough, to certainly be competitive against the better sides. And I say I fancy us against United and Chelsea more than I do against like you, Watford and Burnley, to be perfectly honest. But I don't think it's down to ability. It's more down to this lack of belief in. The fact that when we hit any kind of adversity in the game, we fall apart. So that's the big thing that Lampard's got to try and just get right, or at least put a stick and plaster over for the remainder of the season. Yeah.
Jordy Two Life's got another question actually, and I think you kind of answered this last time, Mike, but we'll touch on it again anyway. So do you not think Big Dunk deserves a chance to be boss? He's worked under big managers and he loves Everton, so I thought he would be the perfect in this current situation. And I've got to be honest, Mike, when Benitez went, I thought Ferguson was going to get it purely for that whole, you want all the fans behind, you want everyone singing from the same hymn sheet. Everyone loves Big Dunk, obviously. I know certain fans will probably say he's not up to it, or that maybe you wanted to go elsewhere, but I just thought in the predicament you're in, I fully expected Ferguson to get it at least until the end of the season, and then even if you brought someone in the summer, I went like, this is the direction we're going in. So I was quite surprised in the end that in the coming days, when it was obvious that it was down to 3 and you were having them interviews, I was very surprised that Ferguson was just all of a sudden an outsider, like it wasn't going to happen.
I think if he wins the game he was in charge of against Aston Villa, then he probably puts himself higher on that list of 3. He wanted the job before Carlo came in. And as much as he said, I'm quite happy to step aside, he wanted the job. I'm sure he definitely wanted it in the summer. That's for sure. When Benitez came in, and he definitely wanted it this time round as well. I think he has got his detractors within the fan base. Like you said, some fans think he's not up to it. He hasn't gone and managed anywhere. He's been a coach or assistant manager under numerous managers. So there's that as well. I don't really think on this occasion that the board properly considered Duncan Ferguson. As I say, I think he would have had more of a chance if he beat Villa in that game at Goodison. But it was strange because I remember going there thinking, should be a breath of fresh air. We think back to how it was when he took charge of that Chelsea game before Carlo came in, and you think, it's like that again today. We're going to win this game, no problem at all. Obviously, Steven Gerrard was back in town as well. First time coming to Goodison Park as a manager, and we all hate him. So it should have really been a great occasion. And it was strange that we just couldn't get going in terms of, it seemed a little bit subdued, and I just think that was sort of Big Dunk's audition for the job at that time, and he didn't quite get it. Will he get the job in the future? I fully expect him to at some point, yes. And as I say, he most definitely, that's what he sees as the pinnacle for himself. But maybe, there was talk that he might have gone to Spain because Carlo wants him over at Real Madrid as a coach. So if he was overlooked for the manager's job, which he was, there was talk he might go over to Spain and work with Carlo. Listen, what a job that would be, and I certainly wouldn't be good to going over there to learn his craft in Spanish football as well. What hasn't happened, but we'll see. I think certainly one for the future, to be honest.
Which English coach did? His name's on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember it. He took an English coach with him, Carlo Ancelotti.
Paul Clements, who's currently on Frank Lampard's.
Yeah, he's there now, and he
is.
And Carlo Ancelotti, he does that. He looks at what the best coaches are around, and he takes advantage of that. I'm just seeing that Firmino's just put another goal in, 2-0 for Arsenal. 2-0 against Arsenal for Liverpool. But Carlo Ancelotti has a fantastic. Just imagine that for his CV, having some time over in Spain at Real Madrid.
Just a year out in Spain would do him the world of good. I think change of scenery, even if it was just like a temporary arrangement for him to come back. I think it would do his world of good and the confidence as well going out there.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah. Tom Dixon's got, this is an interesting question from Tom for you, Mike. Question: in the future of Everton Football Club, do you think you will have a takeover soon at the likes of Newcastle have had?
I think Farhad Bashiri will sell at some point. I think it was always earmarked for Bramley Moore when Bramley Moore opens, and that is on track. Looking good. So yes, he will definitely sell. Obviously, the issues surrounding the money from USM has meant probably he can't maybe sell. He certainly can't sell at the moment because he'd make a huge loss, and as a businessman, it wouldn't make any kind of financial sense. But yeah, we will be taken over. Will it be to the level of Newcastle? I don't know. I don't want to go down any kind of political roads either, to be perfectly honest, because I don't know enough about it, so I can't really comment. But yeah, I think we will. I think it'll be someone of sort of similar wealth to Farhad Moshiri. But as we've shown, this is a massive warning for all clubs, yourselves included. Money doesn't solve everything. Do you know what I mean? Money can nip the heart out of your club, and if you don't appoint the right people, it can go drastically wrong. And we're in a much worse position currently than we have been for many, many, many years. So it doesn't always solve your problems. As I said earlier on, I think Newcastle spent wisely in January and brought in the right kind of player for the situation that you were in. I'm sure the owners will be looking to get a higher quality player or bigger name player in as the the transfer windows go on, and Newcastle look to progress. But it's a hard sell. I think when a club, ourselves, we found that we got rich too late. I think Chelsea and City got rich at the right time before restrictions came into play, and they could just spend whatever they wanted. If they make a mistake, they go buy someone else for 50 million quid. Now we can't do that. Other teams now can't do it. You've obviously got a pot of money which you can spend over the next couple of windows, but then if it goes wrong, restrictions start to really hamper things. So it's a difficult thing, and as I say, it's one of those situations where you can have all the money in the world as an owner. Farhad Moshiri has got a lot more money, but you can put into the club, but he's not allowed to. So it's one of those things, really. We've got to basically our first concern is to stay in the Premier League, because if we do go down, then it's almost that's going to be a tricky situation for Everton to try and get a new backer in and get new money into the club, and two, get out of the Championship, because as you know yourself, difficult league. And we could find ourselves down there for a good few seasons.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that point, because you made about money doesn't solve everything, and you're absolutely right. We've seen teams in the past. Obviously, Everton had a difficult time themselves, but we've seen teams in the past that have thrown money at things and ended up in a really difficult situation. Portsmouth being one of them. Yes, they won an FA Cup. But yes, they played in Europe in the UEFA Cup, but they had. You look at where they're at now; they're in a difficult position, and they're certainly not in a position where they were a number of years ago. And that's the positive thing that I would say about our ownership right now, is that they've had, they've been trying to buy this club for 4 years, and that's a long time in football. A lot of things change in that time, but what they've been able to do is, whilst they've been trying to push to get this sale, they've been able to look at what other clubs are doing, looking at the market, looking at the situation within football, and they've been able to make good decisions early on. We know as a fan base, they were thrust into this situation. The owners have already openly talked about the fact that they weren't expecting to take over the club in October. They were expecting it to be more so around the January time, with the arbitration and everything else that was going on. They kind of planned for that point, so they were kind of thrust into the situation. But I think the way in which they've handled it, looking back about what they've done from October to now, sort of in March time, I think they've done a fantastic job. You talked about, Mike, the transfer window. They have been very smart. They've signed players that we needed to sign in positions that we needed to strengthen. Yes, they spent 40 million on Bruno Guimaraes, but that's more of a statement signing, but that's a signing for the future as well. The boy's 23, 24 years old. He's got lots of time yet to improve in the future, but they've signed the right players for not a lot of money. You would argue that Kieran Trippier at 12 million, Dan Burn at 13 million, Target on loan. Yes, okay, Chris Wood, 25 million is a lot of money for the type of player that he is, but we're about to buy him out of his contract in order to sign that. But, these signings are not any signings that you wouldn't expect an Aston Villa to sign, an Everton to sign. Like, Bruno Guimaraes aside, those signings that we've made, any other club could have made those signings. We've not gone out and done a Robinho and spent crazy amounts of money and brought him from Real Madrid on stupid wages. We've actually been relatively smart on that money. There's lots of talk that Trippier coming in was going to be on 120, 150, 160, even 200 million, not 200 million, sorry, £200,000 a week. He's kept the budget. Like, there's talk that Kieran Trippier's on the same money that he was on at Atletico Madrid, right? So we've done things in the right way, and bringing Dan Ashworth in, and I know it's not confirmed, but I'm sure it will be soon. And a lot of the journalists that are within that situation with Dan Ashworth are saying that it's done. It's just a case of finding the right package, getting someone like him in. He's not a guy that spends lavishly, that goes out and spends loads of money on players to develop the academy and develop other areas of the club. He's a smart operator. So I think we're doing it the right way. And I think, you know, in a bit of a harsh way, that we've looked at clubs like Everton, Aston Villa, Fulham, came up twice and spent 140 million in both of their seasons that they got promoted and went down both years. We've looked at those situations. And I think we've been quite smart with our money, and I mean that's just my opinion. I don't know what Chris and Keith think about that.
I think you're right, Pete. I mean, the one thing that struck me about the new ownership at Newcastle is, and Amanda's interviews, particularly at the start, very methodical, really, and some of their actions as well since they've came on board. The astute signings you've touched on there, but as well the going out and visiting and assessing other clubs as well. Going and visiting the Etihad campus in Manchester, Leicester's campus as well. Seeing how Leicester have steadily built up as well. It's learning, trying to pick the best from other clubs, learning from the best from the other clubs, and try and apply it. Without being too harsh again on Everton and Aston Villa's approaches as well. It just hasn't worked out in recent years for Everton, unfortunately.
I can't remember, mate. You probably saw me smirking when Pete was talking about about our transfers and us being very, very clever with the money, and I completely agree with what Pete was saying. But next time you speak to Richie, mate, have a word with him about Nathan Patterson, because he still argues with me now that Nathan Patterson was a more shrewd signing than Kieran Trippier. And I kept turning around to him and going, mate, he's not what we need right now. He's not what we need right now, but he's still arguing. And like, he still says to me, oh, it'd be better, be better. And I'm saying, he might be better. But right now, we can't wait 6 months, a year. Obviously, this was when we brought him, Kieran Trippier in, and, we needed him to have an impact. And then obviously, you know what happened with those free kicks. He made an instant impact. And now, obviously, he's injured. It is what it is. But you're absolutely right in what Pete said, that we've made signings that here we go. We can't play with Crush. See, look, he's off again. I'm glad he's still watching. And do you know what, Rich? And it's coming again, mate. It's coming again. I'm still waiting.
Richie,
I don't
know you. I don't know you, Richie, but the one thing I say, obviously, with Everton, with Villa, he's effectively got 6 points. So, he's got 6 points better off in the season. So, yeah, he can't play with crutches. But you know what? We've gone to Everton. Sorry, not Everton. We've gone to West Ham and got a point. We've beat Brentford. We've beat Brighton. Obviously we didn't beat Chelsea, but hopefully we'll be beating Everton tomorrow night. That's without Trippier. So it's not all bad. It's not all bad. We could stay in the league without even really needing him for this huge chunk of the season. So, Richie, I hope you meet you at some point. But yeah, that's just my opinion.
We'll have to try and meet him before the match. I'll see if he's free tomorrow. We'll have to try and meet him before the match. It'd be funny. But Mike, I was just going to say I've got an interesting comment here from Richo63, who does watch our shows. So big shout out to Richo. Richo says Everton are looking at Neto, the 32-year-old goalkeeper from Barcelona, as a Pickford replacement. Have you heard that yourself, Mike?
No. I mean, I think that's the whole thing over Trippier, isn't it? And the age situation. We've made these kind of mistakes in the past, haven't we? Where we just lash money at players at the wrong side of 30. On big contracts, and then they have no sell-on value, and that's no kind of transfer model that you should be looking at. So no, not for me. I mean, Pickford may move on in the summer. They all might move on and we go down. Let's be perfectly honest. But I don't know. Not for me. Not for me. No.
Pete, I know you may want to move on, but I've got some belter questions here that I can't wait to ask. I can't wait to ask Mike these questions. But this first one's really interesting, because I genuinely don't know the answer to this. And I remember years ago, I was in my mate's garden, and we were all on the ale and that. And I remember him constantly saying to me, "There's this young lad coming through the Everton ranks called Ross Barkley." And he was going on and on and on about him. And I was like, is he good? Yeah. And he was like, yeah, he's mustard. So I'm interested to know the answer to this. Tom Dixon asks, has Everton not got any youngsters coming through that they could play in the first team and will impress the likes of Lampard?
I think it's not about the youngsters not impressing Lampard. I think it's the situation that we're in, whether you want to put your younger players in there, whether you can trust your younger players to handle the pressure of the
Now's probably not
situation.
the time, is it, Mike?
It's not. If we were sitting mid-table, I think you'd probably see, more of Lewis Dobbin, for example, Tyler Onyango in centre midfield. Even like the likes of Jared Branthwaite, we've probably got more of a go. Nathan Patterson, who everyone's going on about and wants him to start week in, week out, you'd see more of him. And Lewis Warrington's gone on loan to Tranmere, doing exceptionally well. What a talent he is, but you're not going to last these kids in the current predicament we find ourselves in. But there are a few, there certainly are. And I mean, I said, I don't know what I was on before the season started, but I said that Anthony Gordon would be the one this season who would. I just thought, I had a little feeling he'd come through and do something, and he certainly has. So yes, there are, but you're not really going to see them until we know where exactly we're going to be playing football next year.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, mate. I think this question's a bit tongue-in-cheek, if I'm honest, but I'll still ask you it. Gary Milligan asks, do Liverpool fans take the mick out of Everton?
Most definitely, yeah. Of course they do. They probably feel a bit sorry for us, though. I think we're getting a little bit of sympathy, which I don't particularly like at the moment. That's not a good look. I'd rather them be taking the mickey out of us and us be competitive, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, they do. I mean, my dad's a Red. He's not probably one of the most staunch Red he was back in the day. But yeah, they do, of course. But they're horrible, aren't they? They're all horrible. So.
Holding back.
Yeah, I love that. Geordie Tune for Life asks, this one's an interesting one. This is what I want to hear the answer to. Apart from Liverpool, which team do Everton fans dislike the most? I'd guess Man United is what Geordie Tune for Life says.
I'm trying to think myself. One of the lads who does our podcast hates West Ham. There's a little bit of thing with West Ham. Not a lot of love for Newcastle, to be honest. They've got to be honest with that. You know that yourself, Chris. Yeah, there's not a lot of love for Newcastle.
Why is that though?
It's bizarre. It's a bizarre thing. I don't understand this Everton versus Newcastle thing. Newcastle versus Everton thing.
People try and stoke it up a little bit, don't they? And they have done recently as well. I think a lot of it comes from, I think Newcastle fans historically have harped on about being a massive club. Everton fans don't see it that way because it's like, well, what have you won in the last 50 years? And, you're a one city club. Or one club city, whatever it might be. So it's like, well, there's no real comparison, because you got a ground sold 50,000, and it's all a nonsense really. But it just gets it's football fans, isn't it? But I think some fans shout loud. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Leeds, and Leeds fans, they're all, without sort of pigeonholing people, they're all lunatics, aren't they? And they seem to start fights everywhere they go. They started fighting at the party of the week. They were fighting with the stewards and the police and the CS gas house and everything. It was just ridiculous what was going on there. So I'm not a big fan of Leeds. I'm a big fan of West Ham. Don't like anyone really. It's just I like my own club, and that's just how it is. That's just how it is. It is what it is.
I love it.
Liverpool are the ones.
I love it, Mike. I love it. I love the honesty. I've got to be honest. I kind of feel the same about other clubs other than Newcastle. I kind of hate everyone. I live in Leicester, and I people can say, "Oh yeah, Leicester doing well." I was like, I don't care. I hate them. I hate Leicester more than anybody. There's certain clubs that I do not like at all. Leicester on number one in the list. And they've got no relevance to Newcastle at all. Newcastle fans won't even probably care about Leicester, probably even respect them for the fact they've won the league and they've done well and they've built a team. I cannot stand them. There's a few others, and I won't name them because I've had some of their podcasters on this show, and
come for you.
So when we go off there, I may name one or two, but I have a staunch dislike for one or two clubs. But I think with Newcastle, and you're right, a lot of fans don't like Newcastle fans because they have this mentality that we expect to be at the top, fighting at the top table, but they think that we think that we're a massive club. And I think, if you go back to the 90s and the early 2000s, compared to a lot of other clubs, so like I had this conversation with a number of West Ham fans, is that West Ham fans think that they're sort of like a bigger club than us, and look, they're doing well right now. They're up there, and all power to them. But throughout the 90s and in the 2000s, certainly the first half of the 2000s, we were challenging for the title. we were playing Champions League football. We were playing the UEFA Cup. We were got to. I was there. Marseille away, semi-final, second leg of the UEFA Cup. Didier Drogba tore us apart before he went to move to Chelsea. Like, we were there. We were up there challenging. We were, and I keep reiterating that point. And it doesn't mean that I think we deserve to be in the top 5 or 6. And it doesn't mean that we deserve to be fighting the title. But I think over the years we've proven, probably Tottenham aside, because Tottenham, when we kind of fell off, Tottenham then took advantage of that, and they're now ones that are expected to be the top 6. Other than Tottenham, we're probably one of the only other teams outside of that group of teams that have consistently, over a number of years, obviously not during Mike Ashley's era, that was actually regularly in Europe, regularly fighting for the title, played a number of Champions League campaigns, and certainly over the 90s, fought for the title quite closely. And I think that in itself holds a little bit of, standing with Newcastle fans. That yes, we haven't won a trophy, but compared to a lot of other teams that maybe have been in the league longer than us, Everton being one of them, Everton have had a couple of, Champions League campaigns that, whether it was qualifying stages or early group stages, may have not made it. But compared to other teams that have maybe been in the league longer, like, we've had better campaigns in terms of challenging higher at the league. And I think that's probably the mindset of Newcastle fans. Not that we've won everything or anything. In fact, we know that. We sing about it. The fact that we've won fuck all. We talk about it as a fan base. We chant about it. We chant about it even now. At the West Ham game, we were chanting it. Like, we know that as a fan base. But I think if you look at over the seasons, there's only really Tottenham out of that clutch of teams: Man City, Chelsea, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal. Outside of those 5 teams, only Tottenham has probably had more European campaigns, more title tilts than us in that period of time since Mike Ashley has taken over the club, and then obviously subsequently sold the club on. And I think that's what it is. But obviously, a lot of other outside fan bases probably wouldn't understand that. And I think, look, I'm saying all this now, but Chris, Keith,
I think there's a lingering sense. You've hit the nail on the head, Pete, but I think as well, there's a lingering sense of unfinished business with Newcastle and Newcastle fans. You talked about, obviously, the 90s, the push that the 90s, and we'll always look back at these, the great documentaries that have been made recently about the Premier League and the early stage of the Premier League. Newcastle are up there, Keegan and, I'd love it and all of that. And then obviously the Robson years when, again, Newcastle became the second team because of the affection they had for Robson. And obviously Newcastle got closer again and then slipped away in the mid-2000s, and then Ashley came in, and we know what happened there. But there's a sense among Newcastle fans of unfinished business. If we just get that one more run, what we might be able to do if we're in that position again.
Yeah. Do you know what, Keith, and you're right, and I'm going to follow on, from what Pete said as well. Pete, you couldn't have put that any better. Like, obviously, I've had this argument many a time, living in Liverpool, I've had this exact argument. And it's funny because people accuse you, saying, oh, you think you're a big club, and just because you've got a big stadium and the one club city, like Mike rightly points out, and you do find yourself, defending your club as you always do. And, you don't like other clubs, and totally understand that. But the way you've articulated that is absolutely correct, Pete, in that, I, growing up, I'm only 35. I may look a lot older, but I'm only 35. And I look back over the years and I think, when did I see West Ham challenging for a trophy? When did I see Southampton challenging for anything? When, you list all these clubs, like your Villas and clubs like that. And then people go, oh, they're bigger than you. They've won more than you. And you go, no, I know they've won more than. If you look at the, the trophy list, I appreciate, they used to be European champions and stuff like that. I get that. But we've been closer to that point of nearly being there than those clubs. So for me, when I say, well, I think we're as big as them. I think we're equally as good as them. I am shocked that some people just discard us, and you're like, so were you not following football in the late 90s? Were you not there when we signed Alan Shearer and he was the world's most expensive striker? And when we were 12 points clear and Man United pipped us to the league title, when we were playing in the Champions League and we lost the first 3 matches in the Champions League group stage and still qualified. Were you not there when that happens? Or and absolutely
Inter
right. We
Milan
haven't won
away.
anything. Yeah,
Inter Milan away.
yeah. Inter Milan away.
In the second group phase, when there was a second group phase in the Champions League, we got to that, and it went down to that Inter Milan game. If we'd have won that game and we were winning at one point, we'd have gone through to the knockout phases, the top phases. We got to that point. We played it. We played the big game, Feyenoord, for example.
Yeah, Feyenoord with the 3-2. Yeah. I'm sorry. If Leeds are a big club, Villa are a big club, Everton a big club, I feel like you have to talk about us in the same breath. I appreciate we've not got the titles to back it up, but it was funny as well. I'm sure, and I'm going to move on now, Mike, because you're probably bored to tears now. But I do appreciate that. If you look at the total trophies won by Premier League, how many trophies have been won by the clubs in the English League? I think we're 8th or 9th in the league. And then my argument is always, we haven't won anything in 60 years, and we're still the 8th or 9th most successful club in England. What does that tell you? And then, like I say, growing up, I've got all these memories of us doing those things that I've just listed. Ask an Aston Villa fan what they did. Ask, I won't reel all the clubs off, but all these clubs who go, oh, but they're bigger than you. They're bigger than you. And I'm like, well, how are they? I seen one then saying when Leeds came up, oh, Leeds are a bigger club than you. I'm like, really? Like, have you only just been watching football for the last 2 years?
They had a good run in the 60s and the early 70s. And they won the title in the
I'm
last
not...
First Division title, and that's it, really, isn't it? Apart from the little run they had with O'Leary.
I'm not saying that Leeds aren't a big club, but I just find it amazing that you just Leeds, Villa, and Newcastle. No. And I'm like, well, what do you base that on? What do you base that on? But anyway, we could probably talk about that for hours, couldn't we?
Before we move on, would you disagree with anything that we said, Mike, from that point of view?
I think where the argument comes from, it's all this football started before the Premier League, did they? So if we're going to look at things from when the Premier League started in 92, 93, we ourselves will not be classed as, in inverted commas, a big club, if you like. Now, in that time, we won one FA Cup. We've been to FA Cup final, semi-finals, and in various competitions, qualified for Europe, finished in the top 4. Yeah. But, if you're looking at sides who've won trophies and looking at it that way, then it's obviously it's different in those years compared to what has gone before. I think historically, you look at the likes of your Leeds United, your Aston Villa, Nottingham Forest, European champions, big club, of course. They're a renowned name in European football. They are classed as big clubs. I think you've got to look at, modern day. There's big clubs for the modern day. I mean, Man City weren't a big club. Man City were yo-yo going various divisions. Man City are now classed as a big club because they've got loads of money behind them before the restrictions came into place, and they've then won obviously various league titles, Carabao Cups, FA Cups, whatever it might be. So I think the argument is one which is forever and a day. I class ourselves as a big club. Of course, we are one of the most successful clubs this country has ever seen. There's reasons which I can go into why I don't think we kicked on after the mid-80s, which I won't go again. Might be deemed political, which so I certainly will go down that road. So yeah, it's tough, isn't it? As you say, Newcastle in the Premier League era, I've done a lot in terms of where you're finishing the table. You're looking at potential. You should have won the league when you threw it away. Let's be perfectly honest. You've been FA Cup final. You've been in Europe, Champions League. So I understand the argument for it. I really do. I think that in terms of the reason why other clubs say it is because it goes back further than the Premier League, and I think because nowadays football media all centres around the Premier League. Football was going on years before then. So I think there's sort of historical big clubs which have certainly got a claim to that. So those clubs have carried it on into the Premier League era, and then you've got big clubs who've really sort of come along in the Premier League era try and sit on the fence a little bit.
No, fair play.
I like it, mate. I like it.
Yeah. And you know, it's a great discussion. And you know what? It's if it was kind of earlier on in the play with regards to this show, I'd have continued it on. But look, Mike, I really appreciate the fact that you've stayed on for the best part of 2 hours to talk all things Everton, Newcastle. Mad respect for you for doing that.
I'll be on the couch now tonight. You do realise this? Mrs. will be upstairs at the gob, and I'll be on the couch.
Hey, same here. I'm not even seeing the wife tonight, and I'm fully expecting to be on the couch after this show, and there's no doubt about it. But hey, I'm traveling to Everton tomorrow. Just hope you didn't hear that. But it's been absolutely fantastic to share the floor with you tonight, Mike. Great to chat to you again. And you know what? Before I get your predictions, before we kind of sign off the show, it will be absolutely fantastic to have this same chat again with you next season. For both of our sakes, I hope that we kind of both stay in the league and we're in a position to both have this away days chat again, talking about the new season, talking about our new expectations, and both clubs, Newcastle and Everton, moving forward. So massive respect for that. For everything, for both shows in a really short space of time as well. It was only sort of was it, end of January, early Feb that we played, and then obviously again tonight. So brilliant stuff. But we'll end on predictions. Chris, I'll come to you first. Look, at around sort of 10 o'clock, what do you expect the scoreline to be? Everton against Newcastle.
It's such a tough one. Mike's not gonna like this. I'm gonna say 2-0 Newcastle.
Okay. 2-0. Any scorers?
I think Ryan Fraser and Alan St. Maximin. I'm gonna go for both of them.
Wings running riot. Fair play. Fair play. Look, Mike, I'll come to you. Obviously, it's a massive game. We talked about it earlier. You know, Jamie Carragher talked about it last night. Was it last night? I think it was Monday night, in fact. Talked about it being the biggest game in Everton's 20 years. I don't know whether you want to touch on that and whether you agree with his comments, but certainly by 10 o'clock tomorrow night, what do you expect that result to be?
It's certainly a big game. You know, our fans are talking it up as a big game. We've got to try and get something. We've got to try and win the game. It's as simple as that. You know, a draw's not really any good. A draw, if we've got a draw, it's a slight positive. We've got to go and try and win the game. We really have. I expect Goodson Park to be at its horrible best tomorrow. I really do. I expect the players to react to it positively. I hope it negatively impacts Newcastle. I'm gonna go for a 2-1 Everton win. There's no way we're not going to concede. I think we'll go 2 up, concede 1, and it'll be a nervy end to the game. But I think it will be a tight game, but it certainly will not finish goals. That's for sure. I can see quite an end-to-end affair, to be honest.
Yeah, I've got to agree with that. Definitely can't be a 0-0 draw, that's for sure. But Keith, I know you tend to go for a draw with Newcastle at the moment, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what you think the scoreline is going to be. Are you looking for another draw again, or do you think either Newcastle or Everton are going to pip it this time?
I think this game here tomorrow night, it's got a sense of now and ever about Everton. Certainly the weekend as well. If you remember this time last year, Newcastle with the same sort of set of fixtures. They were a goal down to Aston Villa, the same sort of games played as when Everton played Wolves at the weekend at home, and it was late in the game. Newcastle got the late equaliser and the game finished 1-1, and we know what happened there a couple of draws later, and Newcastle had a difficult run of fixtures at the end of the season and still managed to put a run together. Everton on Sunday, they couldn't see it out, and the body language of the players really said a lot to me. At Goodison Park, and the mood at Goodison said a lot to me as well. So tomorrow night with the lights on, it's got a sense of now or never for me for Everton, and they need to get something tomorrow. And Newcastle's midfield is a little bit of a concern for me, but I still think that Newcastle have a bit too much, and I think it'll be I would say it's going to be a score draw tomorrow. I think it'll be 2-2 tomorrow. Goals flying in. I can see Wood getting a goal, and to add to his other goal at Southampton, maybe from one of the wings, maybe Fraser or ASM adding to that. Richarlison at the other end, maybe Calvert-Lewin off the bench, but I think it'll be 2-2.
You do know Flavien Legierne's not playing, Keith.
Yeah, those last minute magic goals, unbelievable. The best couple of minutes that you could watch.
Nuts.
Newcastle as a website.
Kamikaze football. Football, that's what it is.
Keith, that's the best way of explaining it. Kamikaze football. For me, I think Newcastle win. I believe it will be. You know what? I think Gary Milliken is said it in the chat. He's gone for a Stu Penman, and I'm going to agree with him. I think it would be a 3-1 Newcastle win. I think the way in which we press high at the moment. If we play the way we played against Chelsea, we press high, we make it difficult for the defenders and the goalkeeper on the ball. Jordan Pickford likes to play it long. We've got Dan Burn, we've got Fabian Shaw that are fantastic in the air, getting on with things, winning things, high up the pitch. I think if we push the game to Everton, I think we'll really make them make mistakes. And it's not because they're not good players. As Mike said, I think it'll be down to the fact that they're lacking confidence at the moment. And I think there's a chance that we could take advantage of that. So I'll go 3-1 Newcastle win. I'm certainly praying for that because I want to be able to erupt it in the away end at Goodison alongside Mr. Chris Hall. But we'll absolutely enjoy the game for whatever it is, because from a Newcastle position, we are still in a comfortable position, and we're then going into an international break potentially safe. If we can get 34 points, I think most Newcastle fans have said today on social media that will put us safe. So
it's done if we win that game.
Definitely. But we'll end it there. Again, I've just said before, but massive thanks to Mike from the Unholy Trinity podcast. I really, really appreciate your time, mate. Thank you for coming on. Good luck. Obviously, after the game tomorrow for the rest of the season, hopefully we'll have many more chats in the season build-up and the season next season from that point of view. But I don't know if you just want to have a quick few seconds to promote where your podcast is, and so for Newcastle fans to know where you're from.
I'm not sure who will listen to us, to be honest with you. It's rather depressing at this moment in time. So unless you wanted to put something on to fall asleep to, then I wouldn't be coming to listen to us at this moment. But no, we're on Twitter, usual places, at UHT Podcast. We're on Facebook as well, Instagram. Find the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google, everything, Podbean, all those. We're all on there. So come and listen to us, especially, we do a post-match after tomorrow when Everton win. It'll be a good listen for yourselves as well. So come and listen, yeah. And in response, I think Tom asked the question. I want to respond to it. Who's going to win the Premier League? Man City, no problem at all, Tom. Don't you worry about it, because Liverpool win it, we'll go down, and it'll be horrific.
Definitely. I think regardless of the position right now, obviously Sky are bigging Liverpool up with Jamie Carragher, obviously Graham Souness. They're going to big Liverpool up, but I think Man City will turn it on. They normally do. They always have a little dip around this time, and then they'll kick on. So I agree with Mike. But massive thanks to everyone. The main man, Chris, fantastic as always. Mike, absolute pleasure. Keith, with the stats, amazing as always, and a real sort of a huge cog in the away days sort of machine this season. And everyone in the chat, most importantly, you guys make the show. Your questions, your involvement, everything makes away days the way it is. And we love the fact, from myself and Chris's point of view, that we get to bring something different to Loaded HQ with regards to opposition fans' view of every game that comes up every part of the season. So a huge thank to everyone in the chat and for sticking with us. Continue to do so, because we are looking to build and become better and better as we go along. So I'll end it there. You guys take care. Fingers crossed for 3 points from a Newcastle perspective tomorrow night, and we'll be back with more. We don't stop there. We've got certainly a reaction show on Friday night. All the Loaded Boys will be back alongside a special guest that will come and join us to talk everything Everton Newcastle, hopefully for something positive. And we've got more coming up. If anyone knows Dominic Sker, go and search him on Twitter. The senior editor at the Shields Gazette, also presents the Mouth of the Time podcast on Apple and Spotify. Go check him out. He will be joining us for his YouTube debut at some point next week, so keep an eye out for that. And of course, Daz already promoted earlier on, the back end of last week. Mitch, Dr. Neil Mitchell, the Geordie dentist, will be joining us to chew the fat next Wednesday with regards to all things Newcastle United. And of course, at some point later down the line, when available, we will have the main man, Jordan Cronin, back to talk all things Newcastle United as well from Newcastle World. So lots and lots to get involved in. Keep an eye out for everything Loaded. We always continue to bring the content to you, as we always have done. But until then, we do love playing away. You guys take care. Speak to you soon.